Hello and welcome to the Scottish Roadscast, a podcast all about Scotland's roads, bridges and motorways. I'm Stuart and I'm joined by John and Duncan. Gentlemen, great to see you.
Great to see you again, Stuart. It's another sunny night and we're stuck in podcasting.
I know, it always seems to happen, doesn't it? Always seems to happen. Duncan, how are you? It's been a few episodes since you last joined us.
Yeah, it's been a little while. I've been good. I've been busy as always, but good. We've got a good topic this month, so I'm looking forward to speaking about it.
Well, don't keep us in suspense. Tell us what you've got lined up for us.
Well, as you know, it's 80 years since the end of the war in Europe, World War II, and it's also 80 years since the opening of the Churchill barriers in Orkney.
Very good.
Yeah,
It's got to be one of the longest time periods I think we've done an anniversary for on this. Most of the time we're doing a lot of post-war stuff, so this is something different.
This is something very different. It's very far away. It's the furthest north we've gone, and it's very, very rural. It's very, very far away from the Glasgow motorway network or anything like that. But it's going to be interesting. Now, please believe me.
Oh, don't we believe you?
We believe you.
Ladies and gentlemen will also believe you as well. But yeah, let's hear about it.
Yeah,
Okay.
Just go right ahead.
I'll crack on. So, as I've said before, at the moment it's kind of 80 years since the end of World War II in Europe, and it's also 80 years since the Churchill barriers were opened to traffic. They carry the A961 over the water up at Orkney, and it's the furthest north we've ever gone.
So This is off the mainland. We've
off
always
the mainland. We're on an island. Yeah. So if you want to go to the Churchill barriers, you've got to go all the way up to the top of the A9 and take a ferry to Orkney.
Okay.
Which I haven't actually been to Orkney.
I'm planning on going this year.
Yeah,
I'd love to go.
I plan on going as well because I did a lot of research for this and want to start exploring a little bit. So I've gone, well, we'll put Orkney on the list.
Well, do you want to come with me? We could go on a little holiday together.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, there we go.
A little day trip. Why not? Stuart, you can come along as well.
I'll warn them you're coming.
Have you been to Orkney, Stuart?
No, I've seen it across the water from John O'Groats. That's as close as I've been.
It's me as well.
I've been. Here we are talking about it. But I'm assuming, Duncan, you're always brilliant, so you're going to do it justice. And we've made a pledge to go there.
I hope so, yeah. So first off, before we jump into it, we'll name our sources of information. I have to say, if you wanted to know more about the Churchill barriers outside of this podcast, I recommend a fantastic book called Bolsters, Blocks and Barriers by Alistair and Anne Cormack. It was published in 1992, and it features a large amount of construction photographs of the Churchill barriers that were donated to Kirkwall Archives by the resident engineer Gordon Nicol. And it basically tells the story of the barrier. There's lots of very, very nice photographs. I've got it next to me just now, and it's a fantastic purchase. Fantastic.
What was the name of that again?
Bolsters, Blocks and Barriers.
What a great name.
Have a wee look on eBay for a couple of copies flying around.
It's still going about. No, that's good.
Yeah. So another wee source, the New Civil Engineer article from 1995 that was published at the 50th anniversary, written by Dermot McFleming. There's a good article there, lots of photographs and a lot of information. And a special thanks to Orkney Library Archives for supplying copies of the construction photographs that we are going to be popping onto the social media. So thanks very much for sending them over. So this is very much, I know it's a road podcast, but it's very much a story about World War II, one of these World War II stories. So the origins of this, so if you go to Google and you go to Scapa Flow Basin at Orkney, up north, this is basically a natural deep water body harbour situated between, you've got the Orkney mainland to the north, you've got Hoy Island to the west, and South Ronaldsay Island at the bottom. And that kind of surrounds this big body of water, but it's got several openings. It provided a suitable natural protection, and it's surrounded by several islands, and it was the Home Fleet's naval base in both World Wars, so there was a lot of boats hanging around up here. It was, of course, identified as quite a vulnerable spot. There was a lot of openings to the east between the islands that were susceptible to enemy ships and submarines, enemy attack. They did blockade some of this off with some sunken ships, sea mines, and netting placed in those gaps. And you can kind of see these, some of these still around today, some of the sunken ships sitting up there. But a lot of these have been taken away. Still wasn't perfect. Sir William Halcrow, designed a scheme to seal the islands together at the east around the 1910s, but this wasn't actually this wasn't adopted, unfortunately, because on the 14th of October 1939, just after midnight, submarine U-47, commanded by Kapitan Lieutenant Gunther Prien, entered
Very good
Scarpa
pronunciation.
Flow. Thank you very much. Entered Scarpa Flow through a narrow channel. The submarine grounded briefly, but it managed to torpedo the battleship HMS Royal Oak and escape. And the ship sank within minutes, with the loss of about 833 lives lost very quickly.
That's horrendous.
Yeah, so this was a bit of a caused a bit of a shock for that. U-47 submarine was the 13th most successful U-boat of World War II in terms of how much tons of enemy ships it sunk. It disappeared in March 1941 along with 45 crew members. Their fate remains unknown. So, there you go.
Okay.
I know.
Well, comes around, goes around, I suppose.
I know.
There you go.
Jeez. Yep.
So, this incident caused a national crisis. So, the First Lord of the Admiralty, Winston Churchill, he was sent up there and speaking to a lot of the guys up there. But the Navy wanted to stay there. And Winston Churchill only accepted this when he was told that the eastern channels would be closed off by some causeways. And he ordered work to begin very quickly without delays. Now, prior to these barriers actually being constructed, a small steamboat made the connections from Kirkwall to St. Margaret's Hope Village on South Ronaldsay once a week in peacetime, but this had to stop during wartime because of all the battleships in the way. So the plan, 4 causeways would close off the eastern channels that run between the Orkney mainland to the north and South Ronaldsay Island. Each barrier has got a number. So working from north to south, we've got barrier number 1, and this runs across the Kirk Sound towards Lamholm Island. Some features around this particular barrier: the First Nations and Orcadian totem pole sits to the north of the barrier, and the Italian Ornate Chapel, which sits on Lamholm Island to the south. And this was built by the Italians who built the barriers. We'll get onto them later on. So Lamholm Island then leads down, and the next barrier is barrier number 2, which joins to Glimpsholm Island over the Skerry Sound. And the quarry for constructing the barriers is located just to the north of that barrier. It's now a fish farm, so there's still some remnants of the construction line lying around. And then from Glimpsholm to Bury Island is joined by barrier number 3. The SS Regional Block Ship, sunk in September 1915 to provide a defence for the channel, still sits, I think it's to the east of the barrier. You see this sort of
You can
shipwreck.
see it on Google.
You can see the shipwreck still there. It's a nice little feature.
Side SS Regional Block Ship. Yeah,
That's it,
that's cool. People
Yeah.
should look at that.
That's a cool little feature, yeah. And then finally, barrier number 4, which connected Bury Island to South Ronaldsay. That's got a Viking totem pole situated to the north. So like these totem poles up in Orkney, and there's a large beach on one side. So it's quite a deceiving one. This, you think it's quite a natural formation, but no, it was constructed along with the work. Challenges to building these. Obviously, building in wartime is difficult because there's a war on. In places, the waters were 610 meters wide, so not massive gaps, but 18 meters deep with a 13 mile an hour or 12 knot tide going in and out every day. The slack water period was only 20 minutes before the tide actually changes. Now, the various obstacles around the area, such as the sunken ships, ruled out the use of barges and diving work. So they were kind of limited to how they could actually construct these barriers. But model studies at Manchester University were undertaken to determine the most suitable sites and the optimum size of material to resist the water and the waves. So literally guys looking at the size of rocks and studying them, what a job that is. And this was very much overcome by covering the barriers, because the risk of the barriers being washed away, overcome by covering the barriers in pell-mell and concrete blocks. So that's those big thick blocks that sit alongside, and they break up the wave energy. And bags of rocks were used as well. So it's essentially loose rock for the main centre, with bags of rock for the outside, and then covered with these big concrete blocks to protect them.
You're a structures guy, Duncan. Oh, Stuart. I think everyone knows structures guy. Is this what you guys call rock armor? Sort of similar,
More or less.
because
Yeah,
you get this around.
principle.
Yeah, you see it around like piers and stuff like that. So it's basically to shore this thing up. They're having kind of big rock armor all the way
Rip-rap.
along. Rip wrap. Yeah, I've heard it called that.
Yeah. So design of the barriers was by Sir Arthur Whitaker, who was the civil engineer in chief of the Admiralty. Lots of fancy names here. And our old favourites, Balfour Beatty, won the job. And they had just completed a similar project in Iraq across, I think, the Tigris, across the Tigris River in Iraq. Yeah.
What a different world. I think we need little bells, Stuart. Whenever we hear Balfour Beatty mentioned on a podcast, we need to go ding, 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 because they're a contractor that's so constant among history.
Particularly in Scottish construction, roads construction. Yeah.
They've been around a while, yeah.
Sorry.
Now, I've seen a lot of in a couple of places, not in all the places, that William Tawes had some involvement with this, but their involvement's a little bit unknown. I've seen on Wikipedia, I did have a look there, that they looked after barrier number 4, but it doesn't really say in the book or in some of the articles that I read that William Tawes actually did anything. So I'm a bit unsure, but I thought I'd pop that in. So hopefully we'll be able to figure that out in due course.
Someone will know and get in touch to tell you. Yep.
We'll know, yep. And the project was codenamed Rockworks. It's a secret wartime name there. Great name. So site mobilization began in May 1940 with the requisitioned cruise ship Almanzora, and that arrived with 250 men, plant, and materials to Orkney mainland, and that parked up there, and that basically gave them a bit of a base before they got mobilized. However, 3 piers had to be built on the 3 islands between the Orkney mainland and Ronaldsay because of how remote they were. So that was the first bit of the work. And flagstones, they were all laid by hand, basically. So guys were hacking rock out to build the piers so they can start mobilizing the islands. Welfare was constructed. Camps with capacity for 2,000 were built. 5 concrete block work stations, so concrete stations for building the blocks. 5 electric generating power stations to produce 1,570 kilowatts of power and 16 kilometres of mixed gauge railway to haul materials around. So there's a couple of quarries on the islands, and they built these little railways to get them from the quarry over to the barriers. So it's a good little. They had a good little system. Yeah, they had a good little system set up. Around 8 quarries were opened to supply aggregate and rock fill. Now, I think the initial idea to build these things into the water was, you would think, to build from each side into the middle. However, they found that wasn't the easiest thing to do because of how strong the tide was. It would very quickly wash away anything that had been constructed and basically erode it. And if that didn't happen, as the funnel through the middle got narrower, the water funneling through the gap would be so strong that it would essentially just not be possible to close it off. So they decided to build from the seabed up to the surface, and they did this by essentially erecting a large washing line across the gap, supported by 2 big pylons on each side, and they would run little buckets of material out to where they want to drop it into the water, and slowly build it up from the ground there. And that was a much easier way of building it, and it basically reduced the risk of all the material being washed away.
Okay.
4 sets were shipped from Iraq, which is where the Balfour Beatty guys were working, and 1 was actually taken from the A87 Dorney Bridge, and William Tawes supplied that one. So this is the 1940 Dorney Bridges. It's long gone now, but William Tawes shipped that over. So there you go. Loads of the material were limited to about 10 tons. They couldn't ship too much in these little buckets because it would basically cause the whole thing to collapse. And they wanted to slowly build the material up, creating a submerged weir until it came above the surface. And then the material was built out from each side. It just made it much, much easier with the railways to transport materials into the water. It took about 3 years to actually achieve this. From 1941, it's just constantly tipping stuff into the water. And it did cause, I did read in the booklet, it was causing a little bit of concern with the locals saying, well, this isn't working. All this stuff's going into the water. We can't see it. So Balfour Beatty said, all right, we're getting a bit concerned as well. Why don't we just try and see if it's there? So they basically picked a site and continuously tipped material into the water where the barriers were. And eventually, after quite a while, it came above the water. And it basically gave everyone a bit of reassurance to say, oh, actually, this is working all right. But it is.
I can see how that happened though, because it's a bit like roadworks that happen underneath a bridge. No one sees anything happening, but actually everything's going on. But this is happening. But I can see, whether you're just dumping this stuff and it's disappearing into the black abyss where these causeways are. So no, that's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So again, it was all basically loose rock at the bottom, and it would be quarried out with bags of rock placed on top of that, and then it would be the big cubes to break up the wave energy. A roadway was built on top. I mean, I've seen conflicting information about this as well, is that some people say, yes, a roadway was obviously going to be built on top, but some people said, well, no, it was just going to be the barriers themselves. Need to get that clarified. A roadway was built on top, but I think the reason for this was, one of the reasons I found for this was to avoid this being a pure military project. The Geneva Convention prohibited prisoners of war from working on something like this. So they said, well, we're going to put a roadway on top, so it's going to benefit the islands rather than just being purely military works. So
prisoners of war, you say? So
prisoners of war. We're just about to get onto that.
Okay.
So a total of 330,000 tons of concrete and 400,000 cubic meters of fill was placed, and this cost around £2.5 million in total. Interesting. I've mentioned prisoners of war. Staffing. Well, many of the workforce were people who were unable to be shipped off to war, unable for conscription, and many left the project because it was a difficult thing. It wasn't an easy project to work on.
It was in Orkney, so it's obviously further away.
Yeah.
Remote. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Initially, workers from Ireland came over to assist, but the discovery of an anti-British slogan scribbled in a hut in such a sensitive military area forced security services to block the Irish from working on the project.
Oh, of course. Given the timing of this, because it was maybe 20 years after Ireland gained its independence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this caused a bit of a project. And by 1941, the lack of workers had really slowed the project down. The solution came with 1,200 Italian soldiers, prisoners of war, taken prisoner in North Africa. And they were all shipped up to the cold, windy Orkney to help out with the project.
As I say, that's a bit of a climate shock, isn't it? For Africa and coming from Italy and then up in Orkney.
And then being shipped up, Despite this, work was initially slow. The Italians weren't really a fan of working on a sorely military project, which I think was where the roadway idea came from.
Mm.
But General Foreman Sandy Wivel came up with the idea of giving time off for increased productivity. And because of this, production shot up 60%, which was fantastic.
So it did, okay. So they got the project moving, and I suppose they made it a bit. I mean, let's be honest here. Prisoners of war, it's not a nice position to be in, and having to do labour and things like that. That's just sort of what went on. But at least I suppose they went, well, we'll give you some time off.
Yeah,
working on this.
Yeah,
fair enough.
In the book, it speaks. The Italians were craftsmen and wanted to spend time on their hobbies, carving stuff and making objects. The Italians also built the ornate chapel, which is on Lambholm Island. I've seen some photos of this. It looks gorgeous. It's a gorgeous building, built from a Nissen hut, scrap metal, and concrete. And they put this beautiful little chapel together. Italy surrendered in 1943 in the war, meaning that workers could then earn a wage. And I think that only accelerated productivity.
I wonder if many of them stayed. Because some prisoners of war, I know much about prisoners of war, but some of the even German prisoners of war, they just were like, well, we'll just stay in the UK.
Yeah, I've not seen anything about them actually hanging around, but probably one or two thought, yes, this is quite nice up here. Why not stay around? Yeah. And this work continued, and the barriers were sort of finished in late 1944, and they were officially opened to traffic on the 12th of May 1945 by Mr. A.V. Alexander, who was the First Lord of the Admiralty. And there was a commemorative booklet produced, and no, we don't have a copy of this, sadly. I don't know how many were produced, but it would be lovely to look at it. And this ceremony also announced the end of the Orkney Islands blackout. So you'd have your lights on all the time now, so no more switching off for enemy planes. So that's the barriers. Post-war, responsibility passed to the Orkney County Council, which is later the Orkney Islands Council, who purchased them from the Ministry of Defence in 2011, because they were owned by the Ministry of Defence until 2011, but it basically allowed Orkney Islands Council to have a bit more flexibility in looking after them. The main work that they undertake every now and again is replacing the concrete blocks and repositioning them. Settlement repairs were undertaken to them between 1947 and 1950, and I've seen some pictures of them in the storms, and these things get battered in the storms. I mean, some of the waves and some of the weather up there is frightening, and they do get shut sometimes during how strong some of the storms and some of the water coming over the side is. The concrete blocks, they're going to be used for future maintenance, purely to preserve the original barriers as much as possible. Leading on to my next final point is that they're now 80 years old, and they are beginning to deteriorate and become affected by climate change, rising sea levels. Barrier number 2 is the worst affected by this, and there are some discussions going on about what are we going to do. Possibly a bridge will be built, but replacement of this is unpopular with the locals in Orkney. You want to preserve it as much as possible.
And keep it as a causeway rather than a bridge. Is there not an argument? You might get onto this because I've not read your script, but is this not still a military installation in some means? Is there not still an argument for preserving the Churchill barriers for the very reason? Mm-hmm. They were put in the first place. I mean, God forbid, we're in a situation where we require something like that again.
Yeah. So yeah, I think they are actually listed. Stuart, I don't know, are they listed?
Yes,
good with these things.
Yeah, they were listed some years ago by Historic Environment Scotland. And to answer John's questions, no, they have absolutely zero military purpose at the minute. I think 1956 was the last time that there was any MOD involvement in there. I think they've been used for oil.
You do get some things that the MOD cling on to.
That's not to say that, just like Rosyth and other places, it's not to say that they wouldn't come back into use at some point if they needed to be protection. The Northwest Atlantic or whatever, it makes a good sort of staging point for such thing.
Yeah, you never know what's going to happen. The thing is with the bridge thing that you say about some locals say, I'm kind of on their side with it. I want to keep the causeway for posterity, but I suppose is it either we lose the causeway and you have nothing, in which case they all become disconnected and you're back to a ferry, or build a bridge. Well, build a bridge if it is we cannot repair the causeway.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it is. You may think, oh, it's just piles of rock. We don't have to look after them. But
it's the way you've described it.
Degrade. Yeah,
there's a huge effort that went into making these, and nature always wins in the long term.
Nature always wins. I mean, I know over in Holland, the shut-off dike that they've got across the sea in Holland. The big road that goes straight across the sea.
Yes,
they recently had a heck of a lot of work beefing that up due to the rising sea levels and climate change. Because if that goes, then a lot of Holland's getting washed away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that'll probably happen at these things probably sometime in the future, but who knows? But anyway, that's the end of my script. So happy 80th birthday to the Churchill barriers. I hope that's been interesting to everyone.
Yeah, very interesting. I really want to visit them. It's funny.
I want to visit them. Yeah, John, we'll get a day trip up to Orkney. Yeah.
How it sounds like a question maybe that for you that we should do offline, but is there a ferry from Scrabster?
So what you do is you follow the A9 to the very end at Scrabster, and you get the ferry, which is I think just under an hour.
Yeah, because you can see Orkney. I've been to Dunnet Head and these places, and you can see it.
It's not. It's not huge. Not a big ferry journey. It's not a huge.
It's a car ferry though. I can take.
It's a car ferry. It's a big car ferry that heads up there. So yeah, so it's something I'm thinking of doing in the summertime. But
I'd like to go up there as well. So go to partner and I, wife and I will probably go up there. So it'd be nice. But no, I've been following along what you've been saying, and I suppose if anybody Oh, they've listened to the podcast now, haven't they? But it's a good way of enjoying it. Is put the earphones in, get Google up, and listen.
Yeah.
And Duncan will virtually guide you through it, which is
There's a couple of good.
happened.
There's a couple of good websites out there with information on the barriers, and I really recommend hunting out that book that I'm holding up to the camera now, so everyone can see it. It's a fantastic read. I recommend picking one of them up. But yeah, that's all from me, folks.
Nice one. Nice and short. Yeah. Thanks for that, Duncan. It's always interesting to cover some new topics, Scottish topics that are probably unknown to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Encourage a few people to make visits up there, which would be certainly worthwhile.
We do have some photographs coming for the social media for the 12th of May. So if you're listening to this now or in the past, check out some of the photographs we've got.
Yeah.
They're great.
Good.
Check them out.
All good. Brilliant. Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess we should probably mention the sponsors at this stage, as give our thanks to them. So Andy and the team at Eastford Excavations and Nigel and the team at HBS Scotland, thank you as always. We are online because of the support from these guys, so we have to express our thanks to them for the ongoing support this year.
Thank you very much.
In terms of events and things, we will be appearing in a few places. I think I mentioned in the last episode that we plan to be at some of the Bridgeton Bus Garage Open Days. You'll see us there probably May, July, September and October. So if you want to come along and say hello, please do. It's always nice to speak to people who come up and say, I was listening to you and I heard you'd be here. So that'd be very good. And of course, as always, please leave us some reviews of these podcasts if you do enjoy them. Give us a wee review on whichever platform you're listening to us, whether that's Spotify, Apple, Podbean, wherever it is. It's always good to hear from you, and it helps us get a wee bit of exposure for this as well as we try to spread the word.
Absolutely. And spreading the word, we have social media. So probably I'd say, guys, most of our really good stuff is on Facebook. These days we do have some stuff on Instagram and on X, formerly known as Twitter. But, don't forget to kind of give us a like on there, share it with other people. We're still going to be looking at doing some then and now pictures, Stuart. We're trying to get out at some point next week to get some new ones, but we've got a good bank of them going. Duncan and I will also be taking a trip up north in several weeks to try and get some really nice photos in around Skybridge and stuff. So keep an eye on social media because we're going to have some new stuff coming out.
Yeah, sure. And while we're on the subject of social media, I would just remind everyone who's listening, if you are active on our social media, particularly in Facebook, just to remember the rules that are in place for the page. We have had a number of interesting interactions recently, which has led to us taking a bit more of a hardline approach to repeat offenders. I'm sure all of you listening would never dream of breaking any of the rules and are probably great on there. But if you would just abide by those, please, it just makes life much easier for the admins looking after the page.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Please behave.
Please behave. Yes.
Full-time job for you guys.
In terms of upcoming podcasts, Duncan, do you have any other interesting ones planned this year that we should be telling people about, teasing them about?
Well, as we mentioned before, we've got Skybridge in October, that's 30, and we've got Ballachulish, which is 50, so we might do something around about then. We're looking to cover a couple more major routes, so having a look at the A87 to Skye, to tie in with the Skybridge stuff. Maybe finally finishing off our discussion of the A9 with the A9 south of Perth, and maybe some more in the future. But
can I make your life awkward for a second? When are we going to get, and I speak for a lot of ladies and gentlemen here listening to this, when are we going to get the A75? When are we going to go? Soon.
It's on the list, John. It's on the list.
There you go, because I mentioned it on air now.
I need to drive it end to end. I've only done sort of about
You've
2
done
thirds
bits.
of it. I need to do bits of it, yeah. But there's another road trip we can go on, John, with the A75.
I've just signed myself up for that.
And I'm putting my request in for the A77 and the A76.
Yes.
As well.
Right, well,
Poor
do my
Duncan.
best.
No, we shall always give you a hand with these sorts of things and accompany you on any trips.
Lots coming. Stay tuned.
We want to get it right as well, with all the right information. So it does take a lot of time, and Duncan, you spend a lot of time putting these together.
Yeah.
So, it's appreciated.
Well, thanks again, gentlemen, and Duncan in particular. Well researched and very enjoyable
100%.
as usual. And we will see you all soon. So thank you very much, and bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye.